Hi folks, and welcome to a first game in the T95E6. We are here on Prokhorovka with BeyondMe. It's a tier 10 American medium tank, it's a Clan Wars reward tank, and it's not BeyondMe, it's me! And it's my first game. It's my first game in the T95E6. This is a tank I knew very little about, and once again I want to thank BeyondMe for actually allowing me to borrow his account for the day and play some tanks I would never ever otherwise get a chance to play. This was, I don't even know when this tank was came into the game, but it's basically a tier 10 American medium tank. It is a prototype, and you know what, because this tank's history is incredibly complicated. I'm going to do all the history and all the other stuff about the tank at the end of the video. If you just want the gameplay, you're in luck, because I'm going to be going pretty much straight into the gameplay. I'll talk about the history, I'll talk about the armor, I'll talk about what I thought about the tank later on. I'm going to let you experience this tank exactly like I experienced it, because I just went straight into this game without knowing anything about the tank whatsoever. All I knew was, okay, this cupola looks rather big, could be weak, could be strong, it might be good like the T110E5, it could be weak like the Patton's, I have no idea, but I'm going to try and keep it hidden regardless. It's American, so it's probably got good gun depression, and that's pretty much all I know. Oh, and I took a look at the gun, and even though this is not popping up anymore because my UI is completely screwed, yeah, the gun is 120mm, I knew that as well, so it's got a very good gun. What I didn't know when I went into this game is that this gun is actually the same gun that comes on the T110E5, the American Tier 10 Heavy. So this is a medium tank with the same gun as the Tier 10 Heavy, but it's actually got a faster rate of fire. So yeah, I was looking forward to playing this tank first game. I'm having UI issues, so on all the games I played in the Clan Wars reward tanks, you'll notice that the UI is screwed up because, you know, things like dragging the ammo information up doesn't work. My sight up here, my reticule is missing. You know, usually there is a black outline around my reticule, so, you know, it shows me which way is the center. Even if I'm pointing over here with my gun, it still shows me where the center is. Yeah, all of that grid is missing. I'm going to have to reinstall World of Tanks because it's happened in all of these games. The other thing you need to know is that this layout I've got in the tank is exactly the same. I didn't change anything because I was borrowing the account. Nothing is changed. This is exactly how BeyondMe has his tank set up. So 18 rounds of AP, 14 rounds of heat, which I can't bring up the penetration values of, 4 rounds of HE, he's got a small repair kit, small first aid kit, and he's using cola on the tank, so no fire extinguisher. I didn't change any settings for any of the Clan Wars tanks. I played them exactly like BeyondMe would, otherwise he'd probably go crazy with me putting terrible equipment choices on the tank. So yeah, this is the first game I played after launching BeyondMe's account. First tank I decided to play after playing BeyondMe's account. So we're gonna go, and yeah, as you can see, I'm kind of checking out the gun depression, and case of cola has just appeared. Yeah, the UI is completely screwed up. I'm gonna have to reinstall World of Tanks completely. And I'm still trying to get my hands on 9.15.1.1 because I've got so many videos I need to make that I can't. But that's why you're getting this video instead. But as you can see, I've got no reticule. I mean, I've got the main reticule here, but I've got nothing else. It means that feathering tanks, you know, trying to move the black reticule over enemy tanks to see whether or not I've got an outline is not there. I didn't have it during the game, I don't have it during the replays, but yeah, as I say, because I'm in an American tank, I'm pretty much just advancing. There's no RT, which means I can be a little bit more aggressive. I'm just advancing and checking out the gun depression. And first victim, 367. Okay, it's kind of, don't know whether that's a low roll or a high roll because I haven't checked out the tank. But advancing back, and don't want to get shot from the hill. E50 last spotted heading up the hill. We're taking the hill on the 0 line. And there we go. That was a roof shot on the M103. The M103 was hull down, but because this is 120mm, I can easily overmatch the M103's roof armor. M103 roof armor, incredibly weak if you've got a big enough gun. And if you don't have a big enough gun or a gun of high caliber, what you can do is you can shoot the cupola, and you only need about 170mm of penetration to regularly go through the cupola. But that was a roof shot, And now we've got the Object 263, and that shot goes nowhere. Okay. So, yeah, the speed and maneuverability seem to be a little bit sluggish on the tank. That's what I'm thinking to myself. 430. And again, another miss here. Okay, so decent start. We had our first 2 shots for 744 damage, but now we've missed our next 2. Can we get this one in? Oh, not much to shoot at. And no outlines because the replay system is, again, screwed. And we do. And that was better. That was a really high roll. 499. That's when I realized that the first 2 shots I fired must have been low rolls because that was beautiful. 390 on that shot. Oh, yes. I'm liking this. We're up to 1600 already. I'm liking this gun. I like the tank, actually, as well. I think the tank model is absolutely beautiful. I think the tank looks great. A very, very sleek, very, very good-looking tank. But, oh, M103, and we're going for a side shot. We managed to get a side shot in on the turret, and yeah, I'm up to 2k damage already. We're only just under 3 minutes into this game. I'm quite enjoying it. So, you know, it plays a little bit like a heavy tank, although it doesn't seem to have heavy tank armor. Haven't tested the armor yet, but I'm really, really enjoying the gun. So E4 down on the 1 to 2 line. We've got an E50 on the other side of the railway tracks now, and E5 is moving up on the other side of the railway tracks. Batchat's retreated, looking for shots on the 140. So lots and lots of TDs on the enemy team. So I'm keeping rocks between myself and where a lot of TDs will probably be down on the 1 and 2 lines. Just looking for shots. Don't really want to expose too much of my tank because there's so many nasty, nasty TDs. They've got 2 grills, they've got a T110E4 who's about to die, but we're looking for side shots. And old man reaction shot, but as I say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so went for a snapshot. Didn't go, well, I think it went where I aimed, but not exactly the result I was looking for. Batchat's on low health. So yeah, even though we comfortably won the hill, now it's not looking so good. So on the other side of the map, ooh, tried to go for a shot on the side of the turret in E5 underneath the railway tracks. That was ambitious, Irish. That was very ambitious. So yeah, we've got a Leopard on low health. We've got a Batchat on low health who's putting him under pressure. We've got an E5, and there we go. There we go. This is why I'm liking this gun. We're able to snipe the cupola on the E5 underneath the railway tracks, and I'm thinking this gun is awesome. The Batchat takes out the Leopard, but the AX takes out the Batchat. And I've taken my first hit from the E5, but it was worth killing him. Worth taking the hit in order to get the kill. And there we go. Once again, a beautiful snapshot under the railway cars into the E50M's turret. And I am loving this gun. I mean, I'm thinking this gun is awesome. The accuracy seems to be good. The snapshot capability seems to be good. I mean, this is my first game, guys. If I'm getting anything wrong, I'll correct myself later, but these are my first impressions of the tank. I'm loving the gun, I'm loving the aim time, I'm loving the snapshot, I'm loving the alpha, and I'm thinking, okay, other than the fact it's a little bit sluggish, this is just, a little bit unlucky not to get a kill on the T30, but yeah, I'm kind of very, very impressed. I mean, it is a tier 10, it needs to be competitive, but side of the turret and the Object 140, you can see the aim time and the snapshot, turret traverse, they all seem to be quite good. Love the tank. I think it looks, you know, it's just so sleek. It looks so good. Really, really nice looking tank. It's a shame. It really is a shame that most players are never going to get their hands on this because it's just, it's a beautiful tank. Okay, here we go. More shots. Oh yes, another fairly low roll, 342. So we seem to be getting, I don't know, very, very few high rolls. A lot of average to low rolls in this gun, but side of a Type 4 Heavy. And, oh, and there's me complimenting the snapshot capability, and that shot goes high and wide. But that's okay, that's okay. He's probably going to be spotted again, so we've got a Waffentrager on our team moving back to the 0 line, so I'm okay with what's happening behind me. I can focus on what's in front of me. Our team are pushing up the 1-2 lines, so even though there's an E5 and an E50M down there, oh, he dies. There's a T30 all spotted on the 7 line, but the only thing that kind of worries me is maybe enemy tanks are going to get to the top of the hill, but I'm waiting for the waffle tracker to spot them, so I decided maybe I've got 410 meters of view range, although I didn't know that. I assumed it was 400 meters of view range when I was playing this game, but it turns out it's 410 meters, so I move up to try and get some spots. No outline on the E5. He seems to be hiding behind a wreck. Come on, not much to shoot at. Oh, T30, that's better. What you'll notice is now I've actually run out of standard AP. As I say, I'm using the same setup as Beyond, and I've actually run out of AP, so now I'm firing heat, which means I've got to try and avoid tracks, even though you can't see the outlines. I was aiming over the tracks. SU-12254, not much to shoot at, and there we go. I mean, two quick kills in a row. It takes us up to 4.5k damage, and I'm absolutely loving this tank. Really, really good first impression. Now, I'm not putting the tank under a lot of pressure. I mean, I'm not testing out its mobility, I'm not testing out its armor. It's simply all about the gun for me at this point, and that snapshot just flies over the front of the Object 140. Unfortunate, that would have been another kill. So yeah, even though Beyond's been incredibly kind and lent me his account, I just want to remind you guys that all these kills... Oh, lovely shot into the E50M. Probably could have aimed higher, tracks might have been absorbed by the heat, but, or the heat might have been absorbed by the tracks, but front of the E50M, and even with the heat, must have amazing penetration, able to get another shot in. Takes up to 5.3k damage, just one tank left on the enemy team. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, T30 complaining about gold, but I'd run out of AP. So nothing I could do about it, T30, sorry. Yeah, so basically we're advancing. I'm hoping to get kill number 3, but yeah, even though Beyond was incredibly kind and lending me his account, just remember that all these kills I'm getting in the tanks I played are going towards his T44-100 mission. But there we go, first game. So yeah, I say it's safe to say I think I liked this tank. I think I like this tank now. Although I didn't really get an opportunity to play any other games in this tank because I needed to move on to others. I was limited for time. My first impressions very, very positive. I thought the gun was great, but having said that, we didn't really put the mobility I didn't get to test the mobility, didn't get to test the armor, and I think if I got to test the mobility a little bit more and I got to test the armor, maybe my first impressions of the tank wouldn't have been quite so good, but we'll go into that in a moment. But first class on my first game on a tank, I'd never played it before, never even knew anything about before. I was very happy with that, so we finished top on XP with 1059, 5,344 damage done. And 2 kills, as I say, which Beyond you need to thank me for, because that's 2 kills less you need to get on the Americans for the T44-100. So yeah, moving on, 23 shots fired. Now, while during the game when I was playing that, I felt that the gun was great, but looking at the end game results, then I thought, oh, okay, maybe not so great. We fired 23, we only managed to hit 15. Now, the penetration seems to be great, hit 15, pen 15, but didn't hit quite as many shots as I felt I was hitting during that game. Missed quite a few. Had to fire some heat, and basically that cut into my ammo supply. Used a premium consumable because that's how Beyond had the tank set up, and it meant that I ended up earning a credit total of 19,000, almost 20,000 credits with a premium account, and it would have been a loss. With a standard account, but yeah, overall I thought the T95E6 was first impressions were quite favorable. But yeah, let's pop into tanks, GG. Because I think if I got the tank into a different map or onto a different map, on maybe a city map or a brawling map, it would have been a very, very different story. Because what you can see here is the T95E6 has incredibly poor lower glacis. It's only 107 millimeters. Terrible armor for a tier 10. Its upper glacis is only about 170. So, you know, between 180, 170. So there's going to be pretty much any tank that shoots this is going to be able to pen it. It's a tier 10. It's not a tier 8. It's a tier 10 premium reward tank. So basically, you're going to be facing tier 10s and tier 9s. So 170, 180 millimeters on the upper glacis, absolutely garbage. The turret armor was surprisingly good because even though it doesn't look amazing here, it's yellow. What you can see is the turret armor. The sides of the turret are actually quite good. You know, there are some tanks that may be able to pen it, but side of the turret itself seems to be quite good. So it seems to be typical American, go hull down. The turret cheeks, seem to be very, very good as well. There are some tanks that are going to be able to pen the turret cheeks. The optical viewfinder that was over here, that's missing on the model. It's not a hitbox, so that's not a weak spot. And then the roof armor seems to be quite poor. It's only 50 millimeters of effective roof armor and 112 millimeters of effective armor. And then the thing that really, really surprised me again is, well, not surprised me, it was either going to be very strong or very weak, and it turns out that the cupola on top of the tank is very, very weak. The strongest armor on the cupola is only about 190, 170, so easily pennable by pretty much all the tier 8s or all the tier 9s and 10s that face it. Even tier 8s shouldn't have that many problems penning the cupola. And if they can't hit the center area that's quite flat, then you aim for the sides, and this is where it got very disappointing. Look at this. The cupola, the side of the cupola, the round area is actually, it jumps from 75 millimeters, 190 millimeters. There was an area I found earlier that was only 50 millimeters. I can't find it now, but yeah, the cupola seems to be incredibly disappointing. So yeah, the tank, the armor seems to be very, very lacking. And thankfully, I didn't have to check out the armor in that game, didn't have to test the armor, only got hit once and that one-shot pen. So the armor doesn't seem to be very good for a medium tank. The mobility doesn't seem to be very good. The side armor, absolutely garbage, as you would expect from most American mediums. Look at this, 31. If you're playing this tank and you've got tanks firing derp guns or HE on the enemy team, they're going to pen you. They're going to pen you. They can pen the back of your turret. They can pen the back of your hull. They can pen maybe the side of your cupola. So the armor, absolutely garbage to the side and rear. Frontally, the hull armor is terrible. And, you can easily say, well, go hull down, use the amazing turret armor. Yeah, the amazing turret armor is cancelled out by this cupola. So, yeah, I thought the armor, even though I didn't get to test it in that game, when I checked up the information about the tank later, it's not very good. So thankfully my first impressions, although positive, may not be quite as good. I enjoyed my game in the tank, but yeah, the armor going to be very, very lacking in other games. So now maybe the tank isn't going to be quite as good as I thought it would be. Now, normally I go into the history, especially if it's a tank that hasn't appeared on the channel before. I usually go into the history at the beginning of a video, but this time I'm doing it a little bit differently because the history for the T95E6 is incredibly complicated. It is incredibly complicated. It's incredibly long. So if you're into the gameplay and the armor profiles and everything else, you've seen that. That's it. We're done. But if you're interested in the history, that's why I've left it towards the end. Because this is a very, very, very good looking tank. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful looking tank, and it looks incredibly modern. That's the thing that struck me when I started playing this tank. When I first was loading into the game, I was looking at this tank thinking, it looks like a very, very modern tank, which is very, very surprising considering it was designed in the 1950s. It was designed as a successor to the M48 Patton, and the M48 Patton was the main medium battle tank around 1952, 1953 for the Americans, but they were already working on improving it, but the T95 wasn't the first choice. The M48 Patton was going to be replaced by a tank called the T54. Now that's the American T54, not the Russian T54. Now you're probably asking yourself, some of you might be asking yourself, well, what's the American T54? Well, the short answer is it doesn't exist in game. The long answer is the T54 was a medium tank that was basically a better version of the Patton in almost every way. It had a Patton hull, but slightly improved. It had a Patton turret, but slightly improved, and it had an autoloader. Yes, it had an autoloader. So it was Patton turret, Patton hull with an autoloader, better engine, better suspension, better fire system, but it just wasn't felt as if it was a big enough upgrade over the M48 Patton. So there were a couple of variants of the T54. The T54 itself never made it into the game, or isn't in the game, but you have the T54E1. The T54E1, the Tier 9 American autoloader, the only difference between that and the T54 is the oscillating turret. It comes with the autoloader, but it has a different turret. That is in game. And then you had the T54E2, which was basically Patton with an oscillating turret but a single shot gun. So that isn't in the game either, but the T-54E2 is a tank that could easily be added into the game. It's basically a T-54E1 with a single shot gun. Same gun but single shot as opposed to autoloader. So that series of tanks was built to replace the M48 Patton, but none of the variants were considered an upgrade or better, that much better. They were better than the Patton, but not that much better. So the whole project ended up being scrapped, and as I say, only the T-54E1 actually made it into the game. So they next went to around 1953, 1954, went to a tank design called the T95. There were actually two tank designs, the T95 and the T96. They were essentially the same tank. The only difference between the T95 and the T96 was the turret. Same turret, but slightly altered in that the T96 turret was going to be slightly better armored and could carry a bigger gun. But essentially the T95 and the T96 were the same tank, with the exception of a slightly heavier, better armored turret on the T96. T96 never ended up being built, but this tank did. So this is a T95, and there were lots and lots of variants of the T95. We're going to go into all of those variants in a moment, and so many of those variants could be added to the game. In fact, two of them are already in the game, but there are 11 more. There are 11 more variants of the T95 that could be added to the game. So yeah, the T95, incredibly complicated tank, but they went to the T95 because the T54 wasn't considered a good enough upgrade, but the T95 was. So one of the first things that was really, really interesting about the T95 is the number of upgrades, the jump in technology over the Patton. First of all, the suspension was changed to a hydraulic pneumatic system. Very, very interesting suspension used on the tank. Next thing that was changed is this thing here, which you can see is the viewport. It looks like a viewport, but it's not. This is the optical rangefinder. It's an electric optical rangefinder, which was new on tanks for the time. So very, very advanced rangefinder for the gun. The turret was incredibly advanced. This is one of the first turrets, I believe, that was layered. So what you had was you had a layer of steel on the outside. You had an inner core of silica, basically silica gel or silica composite, basically sand or quartz. And then you had an inner layer of steel again. So basically the core of the turret armor was silica, and that was designed to basically absorb shaped charges. So this was one of the first tanks to use a multi-composite turret, which I found very, very interesting. So the engine was upgraded. Pretty much everything that could be upgraded was upgraded. The guns were upgraded to, depending on the variant of the tank, 90 millimeters, 105 millimeters, or 120 millimeters. Now the T95E6, this variant here, ended up with the 120 millimeter. Now it's because this is the biggest gun that was put on the T95 series of tanks, it needed the biggest turret, which means this is a T95 hull with a T96 turret, which was heavier, better armored, with the 120 millimeter gun. And this is the same gun, as I say, that comes on the T110E5, but with a better rate of fire and slightly worse gun handling. So it's a very, very good gun. So the tank, very, very interesting, but as I say, there were lots and lots of variants, so I'm going to just get to the wiki page, because otherwise I'm going to get very, very confused here. So here we go, the wiki page, versions and modifications. You can see that there are a huge number of versions and modifications. 12 versions and modifications of the T95. Now, the original T95 was a T95 turret with a T95 hull, and it came with a 90mm smoothbore recoilless fixed mount. The T95, not in the game. Could be added to the game, but not in the game. So then you had the T95E1, which was basically the same tank as the T95, except instead of a recoilless fixed mount, it had a recoil mount, but it had the same gun, and it had a simplified fire control system. So again, tank that could be added to the game. You had the T95E2, which used the turret from the M48 Patton it was replacing, and had a 90mm rifle gun. Now the T95E2 is in-game. It is in-game. That's the reward tank you get for inviting a friend, and by platooning with a friend and earning 1 million XP between you and your platoon mate, you can get your hands on a T95E2 through the invite system. But it's basically the T95 hull with the M48 patent turret and a 90mm gun. Tier 8 premium tank that anyone can get their hands on as long as they've got a friend and as long as they've got plenty of time. Then you had the T95E3, which was the turret from the T54E2. So it was an oscillating turret. And a 105mm gun. So this is the T95 hull with the oscillating turret from the T54 tank that we have in game and a 105mm gun. This sounds like a tier 9 to me. This sounds like a tier 9 to me, but it's not in the game. We've got a T95E4 turret from the T96, so it's got the better armored turret, and it's got a 105mm gun. So oscillating turret in the E3, a heavy armored turret on the E4 with a 105mm smoothbore gun. Another tank that could easily be added. I mean, there are so many variants. When Wargaming say they've got, they're running out of tanks, they're eventually going to run out of tanks. There are so many variants. There are 2 T54 variants that aren't in the game. There are 9 T95 variants that aren't in the game that could be added. I mean, it would mean a heck of a lot of tier 9 tanks, or a heck of a lot of premium tanks, or a heck of a lot of clan rewards tanks, but the tanks are there. The tanks are there. But yeah, we've got the T95E5, which was basically a T95E2 with a 105mm British 105mm gun. You had the T95E6, which is this tank we've just covered in game, which had the heavy armored turret with the heavy armor 120mm gun. It was a rifle gun, but you could see that these last 2 tanks were never built. So all the tanks up to now were built. T95E5 never built. T95E6 never built. More variants, and these ones we could pretty much skip because we have a T95E1 with a 105mm gun, never built. T95E8 was a T95E2 with a better engine. T95E9 was a T95E6 with a better engine, never built. T95E10 was a T95 with a better engine. T95E11 was a T95E6 with a better engine. And finally, we're getting there. T95E12 was a T95E6 with a better view rangefinder, better fire control system, and a better engine. So basically, if we just ignore the ones with the engines, basically we've got 7 or 8 variants T95 all the way down to the T95E7, all variants of the T95 that could be added to the game. At the moment, we've only got the E2 and we've got the E6, so very, very complicated tank. But in the end, basically, the problem with this tank, it was never adopted. It never made it out of prototype stage, and the main reasons for that was basically it was felt that the guns weren't good enough. So there were some guns that were good enough, like the 120mm, but the 120mm was never built. So of the tanks, the tank with the 105mm British gun was never built. So basically, the tanks that were built, the prototypes, only came with a 90mm, or a couple of them came with a 105mm, and it was felt that basically the medium tank, even though it was better than the patent in pretty much every way, the problem was that it was still not better enough regarding its guns. The guns were underpowered. So basically, if more of the tanks had gotten built with the 105mm or the 120mm, maybe the T95 would have made it into production model. But as is, the prototypes that were built only had 90mm or a 105mm, and the project was scrapped because it was felt it was undergunned. But there we go for the history. This is just, I'm just incredibly privileged, really, really happy to have had the opportunity to actually build or play this tank. I love the look. I am so sad that I will very rarely ever get the opportunity to play this tank unless people lend me their accounts, because I'd really love to test this tank. The armor seems a lot worse than I was expecting. The gun handling, I love the gun from this game, but the gun handling, the aim time and the accuracy, even though it seemed to behave in this game, are actually pretty poor for a tier 10 medium tank, even though, as I say, it didn't show off, or it didn't seem that way in the game. The mobility seems to be quite poor. The mobility seems to be slightly worse on this tank than it is maybe on the M60 or the patent at tier 10, and I didn't get to test that as well. So there are lots of there's lots of games I'd like to play in this tank before I could get a full opinion of it. But my first impressions were very, very positive. Really, really happy to feature the T95E6 on the channel. It's just a very, very interesting tank. Anyway, there you go. History and me waffling on and on and on. It's done. Thankfully, if you were only into the gameplay, you're long gone. I apologize for keeping you so long. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.